Hey everybody, welcome back. We've got an exciting video today. We are talking France and French long-term stay residency, the ability to live in one of these fabled countries that as Americans you dream about the opportunity of living in a place like France. And one thing I'm shocked at is how simple it is. And we have an expert with us today. He's joining us from France. We're currently hanging out in Germany, but we are going to have Fabian coming over, and he has a one-stop shop. So if you have questions about residency or long-term stays, he can help you get that process, the medical coverage you need, things about cars and places you might want to live. So we're actually going to be doing 4 different videos with him because there's so much to cover. So we'll be putting them in together in a playlist, and there'll be a link at the end to go to the next video as they're released. But we're going to release them one day after the next so that you're not waiting for a long time to get all this information. It's really fantastic stuff. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Fabian.
Thanks, Warren and Julie. Yeah, so today, as you were saying, we will talk about the long-term stay in France, or how to stay in France long-term. Hopefully, by the end of this, you'll see me as your immigration GP. That's the joke I like to make. Yeah, so France is at the minute one of the most flexible countries in Europe or in the Schengen area to get a visa from or a residency permit from, simply because as a French visa or residency permit holder, you're free to travel all across the Schengen area, unlimited. Well, like you can exceed the 90 days allowance. Obviously, you're only able to become a taxpayer, so remain 6 months or more in the country where you have the visa or the residency permit in. But basically, apart from that, France allows you to be in and out of the country as often as you'd like, as long as you're filing your taxes there. The Frenchmen would be happy. So how to get that? Well, actually, it's a 3 steps process. So the first step is you get a visa, and we'll cover this. You need to get a visa, but then France allows you to be part of the French healthcare system from year 1, actually very quickly in most cases after 90 days. So you basically have just a 90 days period, waiting period, and then you can apply into French healthcare. You won't be accepted straight away, but by the end of that first year, you should be part of the French healthcare system, which we call social security, but that's not pensions in France. And then by the end of that first year's visa, for most people, there's exemptions. Some people may apply for a residency permit straight away, but not to confuse the audience, usually it's a visa, then healthcare, and then residency permit at the end of the first year. Then you'll need to renew this residency permit, but basically at this stage, you're pretty much French. Like the residency permit is a formal card, like a driver license card, and then you can live in France, travel around. Then you're part of the system. So it starts with the visa, and mostly boils down to the visa. And something we were joking about with Warren and Julie, like, yeah, from the US, for example, I know that like just the name, the word visa, like sounds a bit daunting. You're like, oh, that's going to be a tricky process, which, I mean, it is also in France, but not for the same reason. It's just because of the French bureaucracy. Like, yeah, sure, they require quite a bit of paperwork, and obviously most of the words they'll use would be confusing. Like, for example, the retiree's visa is called the tourist visa. It's like it's the visitor visa, sorry. So it sounds like it's a temporary one, whereas it's a permanent one. But a French visa, at the end of the day, boils on to meeting 3 main tests or requirements, which are proof of address, proof of income, and proof of medical coverage. So if you have a French address, if you meet France minimum wage, or you have income that totals to 12 times France minimum wage, which is 1,400 net a month at the minute, and you have medical coverage, basically an insurance that should meet a certain set of criteria, but basically insurance you can buy, then it's just paperwork. Then you're pretty certain you can get a visa.
And as far as the insurance, you're the guy for this as well. So we're going to actually have a link to Fabian's company through our website. If you go to warrenjulie.com and warrenjulietravel.com, and you go to our health insurance tab, we'll have one set up just for the French insurance part that you need in there. So we've got several companies in there, you'll want to look for the one for Fab in there, and and you can go into that link and you can get in contact with Fabian and his team to get the insurance you need. And you can also send an email that I'm going to put up here on the screen that will also send you in to Fabian so that you can speak with him or email with them and get the coverage that you need. As most of you know that follow us, I deal with a lot of different coverages for international travelers that go all over the world. And we are set up to help you wherever you go. However, France has specific needs, and I do want to make sure that you are getting a French tailored program that is going to take care of you. And we're going to do a whole video about that topic. So I won't speak too much on it here, but I want you to know that we can get you over to Fabian. So if you're looking at starting this long-term stay process and need that French coverage, you're going to be able to get it right here from Fabian.
My understanding, and maybe you can help us here, I got an Airbnb, for example, for 30 days. Maybe I could turn that into the consulate?
First, it depends on the type of visa you're applying for. Like for a 6-month visa, for example, or, well, basically short-term visas, then yes, that would be acceptable. For a 12+ month visa, like a 1-year visa or a renewable visa, then in theory, France expects you to have a permanent accommodation, like a permanent address, and only 3 supporting documents would satisfy the theoretical requirement. So the 3 things that are 100% compliant would be either, well, obviously a proof of ownership of a French property, with the bubble, that's good. So secondly, that would be a long French rental contract. So I won't get into the specifics, but most of the time it's safe to say France only have one type of rental agreement, which is a 1-year contract, although it's different from many countries. Basically, it's the property owner that is committed for 1 year, not the tenant. The tenant in France can walk away within a single month notice. Even if you just signed off the lease, then you can walk away in 1 month's time. So you're not really committed. It's the landlord or the property owner that is. So the contract is a second type of supporting document that's accepted for that proof of address. And then thirdly, the last type of supporting document that's accepted is if you know people in France, whatever their friends, family, acquaintances, and then they're happy writing a letter that says, we're happy having you around, basically, like we're happy having you at our address. So that's called an attestation d'hébergement in French. And if they basically sign it off, then that's also visa compliant. There's no certainty if you're not using one of the 3 I've mentioned, which are certain. Like these 3 I've mentioned are certain. The other ones will depend on how flexible they are at the time and if they're happy looking the other way, to look the other way.
Okay, and then that 1,400 euros per person, correct? If it's a husband and wife, you need to come in for that financial requirement at 1,400 euros, because that's 3 times the minimum wage.
2,800 you need for a couple?
Yeah, so 1,400 net a month, so 1,400 per person. That's indeed a theoretical requirement, so per person per month. So children, they'll have a 30% increase per child based on French minimum wage.
Okay.
But
2,800, then children are 30% more than the 1,400.
Yeah, no. So when that's a couple, yeah, indeed. Well, in theory, this is 2 times French minimum wage, and that's what we would advise anyway. Because, well, depends on where you're from, but from the US.
And 2,800 euros is basically the average Social Security amount, which 2024 is bringing in about 2,900 for a couple. So
yeah, but if they are early retirees, they may not yet have access to this. So maybe that then they'll have income. And I didn't mention this, but like even if you just have like 1,000, let's say you have rental income, because any bit of income would qualify. Like you have $1,000 income a month, okay? You're still short, let's say 400 if you apply as a single person. You can top it up with savings. So basically you're missing 400 times 12. That's how much you need in savings to then qualify, okay? Or you can have 0 income and just have the savings.
You just need 16,800 euros worth of value in your bank account to show that you're good
It
for the
needs to be
year.
liquid. Yeah, it needs to be liquid assets though. Like if you have, even if you're a multimillionaire in real estate, it's not liquid assets, so that they won't use that. But if you have stocks, bonds, obviously cash, then they'll accept it. So, but as a couple, as I was saying, again, this is theoretically this is per person 1,400, but very often they'll be happy with 2,000 as a couple. You know.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
And is that income that you can actually survive in France? I mean, I think a lot of people think, wow, France is so expensive, but we've been doing our research recently, and we've been amazed at how different parts of the country seem to be so affordable. So are people coming into France and able to actually have a quality of life on that type of an income?
If you're in Paris or in rural France, you wouldn't expect the same kind of price of living. But on average, for example, if you're coming from the UK, France would be 15 to 30% cheaper. If you're coming from the US, that would be 30 to 50% cheaper.
Yeah.
So like could
But
be
yeah,
half the price.
Yeah, we were looking at some of the prices of the standards of living in Normandy and Brittany regions in France, and also going along towards your area of Bordeaux, and just in shock at the price of housing, the rental prices, and we ran some stat comparisons, and we're actually pretty excited that we may try to get a quicker trip out to some of these regions than we planned, just because we're pretty curious, and we're actually kind of excited about the information you're providing. So let me do a quick rundown on this process. First off, if you want to go to France and live and get the long-term stay, and you can do this for 12 months renewable, that you would need to have 1,400 euro equivalent per person for a couple, and then children 30% more. You'll need to make an appointment with the consulate in your home country or country of residence to apply for the long-term stay before you get to France, but you will need before that to have the address. So you have to have an address in France before you go to the consulate, and you can't do that consulate visit in France. You have to you have to do it in your country of residence, and that can potentially be the country you have residency in. If you're already an expat abroad somewhere else, you can go to the French consulate.
But let's say if you live in Bulgaria, you have a legal residency there, then you can also apply, even if you're US citizens, you can apply in the US or in Bulgaria, in the example I took.
And I understand you start on the France government website, you start the application there, and you move forward from there, and then you get to your accommodation. Once you do that, I believe it goes into the booking of the appointment, and you pay for that appointment.
Yeah, which is roughly 99 euros per person. Yeah.
And what I'm amazed about is how quickly it seems like the visa turns around.
Yeah, on average, worldwide, it's like a couple of weeks. Although it depends on how busy the consulate or the subcontractor is. I've seen 3 days as a turnover as quickly as 3 days. It shouldn't exceed a month. That's but I've never seen, I've seen 3 weeks, but like a month, because, technically speaking, they've taken away your passport. So you're kind of stuck. So that's why they have to give it back quickly. Yeah. Basically, my job is to help you make it across, make it to France. And we have a vast network of people we work with. So it's either done in-house, we can advise, and I can advise you. We offer free consultations. And then we can refer you to the like a GP, to the specialists. Yeah.
And I think it's important to also say, so you get your long-term visa, you get to France, you have 90 days, correct? Once you have that visa in hand, you need to get to France within 90 days to apply for that residency. Is that correct?
Not really. Within 90 days, you need to activate your visa.
Okay.
And that needs to be done in France. Then residency is something you apply for when your visa is about to expire. Usually people would do that a couple of months before expiry, but it's actually exactly the same rules as the visa. It's the same requirements for a residency permit, although this time this would be in France. And you do that when 90 days to 30 days prior to visa expiry. So the ideal residency application window, I would say, is 90 to 30 days prior to visa expiry.
So after you're extended, you get your 1 year extended stay visa, and then you can turn that into a residency.
Yeah.
And you apply basically 60, 90 days before that long-term stay visa ends, and you do that in France.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And then usually, you'll keep on renewing these 1 year's permit. It becomes discretionary at this stage, but I would say the average process, again, that there are exemptions and people sometimes are different, but so on average, they'll renew it like it's a 1 year visa, 1 year residency permit, and they'll renew it 2 or 3 times. So it's 2 or 3 times 1 year. So that's 5 times total. And then you get a multi-years permit, which often is a 5 years, so 10 years total. And then at this stage, they'll give you the permanent permit, which they pretty much no longer check for any requirements. It's like renewing a passport. And then the permanent permit is a 10 years permit, like a passport.
And is there a minimum stay yearly that a person needs to stay in France to end up getting a renewal?
Well, technically, I would say, well, in theory, yes, but like technically, not really. I mean, as long as you file your taxes in France, I'll put this way, the French would be happy with that. And then you meet the requirements. Because obviously to be a resident in France, you need to be a resident. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the taxes. So how does France look at the taxes? I know there's a treaty that they have with the US about double taxation, but what about people on their retirement, what we call Social Security, which your Social Security is the government healthcare, so not to be confused, but the American Social Security person, is that going to get taxed, or somebody on a government disability, or their Roth IRAs, their 401ks, which are
so, well, for people in this situation, where we work with tax lawyers, and I would strongly suggest you have a chat with them. But I mean, to answer the question, on average, when you get a pension from a state, a public pension, not a private one, so like disability benefits or a social security from the state, or superannuation from Australia, or a pension from the UK, whatever, it's usually not taxable in France. So it's tax exempt in France. However, maybe you'll have other taxes. For example, depending on your situation, maybe you may have to pay for French healthcare benefits. We won't digress too much, but France is very generous with that. So household income under, I'll run the number up, but like under $50,000 at the minute, you would be tax exempt. So you'd get French healthcare for free, at least at the minute. That's basically the deal. And if you're making more than this, even if you're tax exempt in France, that's why they want you to file the taxes, then you'll have to pay for French healthcare, but only on the bit of income that exceeds that $50,000 allowance. So even someone making 6 figures in France, and there is a maximum as well, by the way, like even if you're making 2 million a year, you wouldn't be taxed on 2 million. So there's a minimum, like under 50, you're not paying, but over a certain threshold, which I think is 250, you're not paying either. But then again, I have a chat with the tax lawyer, but even someone making a 6 figure would pay roughly $3,000 a year to get French healthcare, which is marvelous. But I mean, we'll probably talk about this on another session.
Okay, so we're talking $3,000 is probably your worst case scenario on your taxes and in France, and that's if you're making more than 50,000. And
1,000. That's if you're making 1,000 a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So
100,000. Sorry, 100,000.
Making 100,000, you're looking at maybe 3,000 in tax, but that's giving you French healthcare. So that, I mean, in the US, especially if you're retirement age, you're looking at $800, $900, $1,000 a month. And
you have zero deductible in France, no excess, no deductible. And again, not to bother you with these topics, but basically the general idea is that you always will get, once you're part of the French system, you always will be provided with at least one option that's completely free of charge. Like even if we're talking hospitalization, open heart surgery, even like the glasses or dental cares, you'd always get an option for free, always. Although for the glasses, for example, if you want to buy like the Gucci frames, like I'm always saying, first they'll tell you Gucci is Italian, so beware. And secondly, Well, obviously, if you're going for the fancy brands, then you might have to pay out of pocket. But you would have an option, perhaps with a less luxurious brand for free. Yeah.
As far as a background check, France does their own background check, so you don't need to go to the FBI and do anything. They do the biometric, I think, when you apply.
Yeah, they do everything in the visa center if you're from the US. That background check depends on the type of visa you apply for. Like if it's a business visa, you may have to do that. But for a non-working, like retirees visa, which is like one of the most popular option, or a non-working general, or even a remote worker would apply for the non-working visa, then you don't have to go for that background check. At least at the minute. Again, the whole thing can change, but for now, you're good.
Okay, and digital nomads, can they use this visa, the long-term stay?
Digital nomad, well, depends on what they're doing, but like yes,
It's
well,
showing the income.
if they're considered as remote workers, like say for a US employer, and they're not working for a French employer, that would work. Yeah.
Super. Okay, well, this has been great. Now, as a reminder, we're going to be doing a few more videos here on this topic. So make sure you're subscribing. Don't forget to give this video a like, share it with somebody that would benefit from this information. It's great information. And, don't forget to join our Facebook group, Warren Julie Travel on Facebook. And we also have a house swapping group, but most importantly, subscribe to the channel, do the notification to be told when we release a new video. And we hope that you're going to go and immediately leave this video if it's after day one and watch the next video that we're about to do with Fabian. And we're going to talk about the French healthcare system. And we'll be following that up with about transportation and vehicles in France with the third video. And the fourth video we're going to do is where you may want to live in France if you're coming over with a long-term stay or residency. So until next time, everybody, have a great day.
Bye. Cheers.